Thank you all for joining me for this webinar on Spanish language and culture. My name is Rafael. I've been a Spanish teacher online since 2020, working with over 400 students all over the world. Prior to that, I spent my 20s traveling extensively, exploring different cultures and ways of life. So I understand how excited you might be about moving to a new country to teach English. The TEFL Institute of Ireland reached out to me recently to put together this presentation, which will be, as I already have mentioned, on Spanish culture and language. And I hope it will help those of you who are thinking to settle in Spain or any other Spanish-speaking country for that matter. We'll be focusing today basically on two parts. There's two goals of this webinar. The first part I have called Spanish Essentials. And basically here we'll be covering key phrases, expressions, as well as strategies you'll need to navigate daily life in my country, in Spain. And in the second part, Cultural Insights, we're going to be looking at Spanish customs, behaviors, and everyday life so you can connect better with locals and feel at home faster. I'm expecting the whole presentation to last for about 40 to 45 minutes. We'll leave about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for Q's and A's, if any. So yeah, if you have any comments or questions that you might want to ask, please keep those for the end of the presentation. I've been also asked to remind you guys that any questions about topics like finding TEFL jobs in Spain or teaching English online should be addressed to the TEFL Institute of Dublin. So yeah, this won't be covered basically in this webinar. I like to also remind you all to keep your mics muted to ensure a smooth presentation for everyone. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, I would like to start by talking a little bit about the Spanish language, and I'm gonna try to keep things light and fun here for you guys. Everything I'm gonna be talking on for the next 10 to 15 minutes is based on my own experience as a teacher, as well as by having many Anglophone friends who are either trying or have learned Spanish in the past. So first thing first, saying hola, saying hello in Spanish. As you probably know, Spanish greetings are delightfully warm. We say, well, there's many ways we say hello, but you guys can expect handshakes between men and two kisses or dos besos, right cheek first, between men and women or between women. These gender-based dynamics are obviously being contested nowadays by newer generations, such as my own, millennials, as well as Gen Z. But it's still how most people say hello in Spain. Handshakes and kisses are the norm. Obviously, don't panic. It's a gesture of friendliness, not intimacy, okay? I have garnered here a few useful sentences, phrases, vocab, that you might hear within your first few hours, if not days, in the country. So obviously, ¿qué tal and cómo estás? That's how we say, how are you? ¿Qué tal is a bit more informal. It's the equivalent of like, what's up? Whereas ¿cómo estás? Is just the classic, how are you? Encantado de conocerte. That's our pleased to meet you, which would be encantada for women or people who identified as female. ¿De dónde eres y a qué te dedicas? ¿De dónde eres is where I'm from. ¿A qué te dedicas is what you do. People in Spain tend to ask these questions. Please don't take them as a sign of being sniffy. It's just, you know, we're curious people. We like to learn about others and we're very social. So yeah, de dónde eres y a qué te dedicas? It's basically common questions to ask in a first encounter. And finally, nos vemos y hasta luego, which is basically our see you later. I hear a lot adios, especially in pop culture, in films, foreign films, I mean, right? And also when I hear people speaking, foreigners speaking Spanish. And I must say that adios sounds extremely literal and really not that common. Native speakers don't use adios as much. It sounds very absolutist in a way. It's the kind of thing you would say to someone who you might not see ever again. So that's not what we want. We want to see you guys as many times as possible. So let's stick to nos vemos or hasta luego. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about bar culture in the country. I'm sure that many of you guys have visited Spain in the past, and therefore you know that in Spain life happens very much in bars. By bars here, I don't mean the kind you're thinking of. I actually have a little definition of what I understand and what most Spanish people understand by bars, which is a social hub where people have breakfast, coffee, or a caña. For those of you who don't know, caña is what we use for a small beer. Some common vocab here would be me pones, which is can you put me, but it's the equivalent actually of can I have. And then you can go for una caña, por favor, or if you prefer to stay sober that day, un café solo, con leche, o cortado. For those of you who might not know, cortado is the common go-to for coffee in Spain. It's basically espresso with a dash of milk. And those as well, otra ronda, right? Um, we like to drink socially, and I'll get into that in a second as well because there's some interesting data there. But otra ronda is basically the equivalent of another round. Yeah, as I said a few seconds ago, Spain is known for being a country of beer and wine drinkers. As a matter of fact, it's one of the EU countries with the highest beer consumption per capita. I want to debunk any stereotypes or stigmas. Spanish people don't drink excessively, at least not often. Spaniards tend to drink in moderation. Beer and wine being, as considered as social lubricants, I would say. So basically, drinks are often enjoyed with other people over meals, and it's just a way to make sure that conversations flow in a more dynamic and fun way. So basically, my point here, guys, is to ask for a caña in my country is not just ordering alcohol; it signals socializing, being on a terrace, hanging out with friends, and just enjoying the Spanish lifestyle, basically. We're getting into some vocab, and there's a few words or something I would like to underline as well, and that is maybe some of you have learned Spanish in the past or are thinking about learning Spanish, and it is my understanding that you're all native English speakers. Spanish and English are a lot of words, as English has etymologically it comes as well from Latin, at least part of its vocab. But you need to watch out because false friends or falsos amigos exist and they can be tricky. I hear them all the time in my classes, so I picked a few today to show you how confusing they can get. This is just a list of 4 of them that I find particularly funny. The word embarrassed in English resembles a lot of embarazada in Spanish, which doesn't mean ashamed. It actually means pregnant. So careful with that because being ashamed in Spanish would be translated as tener vergüenza, which sounds completely different to being embarrassed. Equally, constipated and constipado have nothing to do with each other. Constipado is actually having a cold. So if any of your Spanish-speaking friends is constipado, please don't offer them a laxant. Equally, I am hot and estoy caliente is something that I hear very often. Caliente means hot, and I am, the verb to be for the first person, it translates exactly as estoy, yo estoy. However, saying estoy caliente in Spanish conveys being sexually aroused, which is very different to being hot in English. Um, Finally, exit and éxito also sound very similar. However, éxito means success, which I wish you all in your future endeavors if you decide to come to my country to teach English. This can lead, obviously, to like funny situations, but the good news is that even if you get them wrong, you'll definitely catch the Spaniards' attention. We love nothing more than a bit of playful banter. In regards to that, to sense of humor, actually, I should say that in my experience, Anglo-Saxons tend to have a more self-deprecating sense of humor, which I truly like. I like the dry, especially British sense of humor. Spaniards, we on the other hand, usually direct our jokes towards others. So humor here is a bit more teasing, we could say. So just something to bear in mind when people are making jokes here. Something else that I would like to address in regards to the Spanish language, I get asked this often, is the difference between Latin Spanish and Castilian Spanish. As you guys know, Spanish is a global language. It's spoken by about 500 million people. I'm talking here like as native speakers, right? In more than 20 countries. Obviously, Spain and Latin America are the bulk of it, but there are some surprises here as well. As a matter of fact, the language has become more prominent in the last few decades in the States. As a matter of fact, the US comes second in terms of native Spanish speakers, second to Mexico, with, I believe, around 60 million native speakers. That's about 12 million more speakers than we have here in Spain. And maybe some of you don't know, but Spanish is also the official language of Equatorial Guinea, which is a small country located on the west coast of Central Africa, right on the equator. And that speaks of the Spanish, basically conquistas, right, in the past. The languages are very similar. The language is the same all over the geography or the Spanish-speaking world, just like English remains the same regardless of where you are, whether you are in Australia, Ireland, or South Africa. But obviously there are some differences. I think there's three things mainly, even though there are more, but these are the ones I picked up. The first one, in terms of pronunciation or pronunciación in Spanish, and I'm using this word specifically for my purpose here, pronunciación. You can see there that the C sound when I pronounce it, it sounds a bit like the TH in English, like thunder. That's why we pronounce here Barcelona. However, that C sound is followed by E or I in all of Latino countries actually, is pronounced as a C, as an S. So my friends from Mexico or Colombia, they will actually say Barcelona. Obviously here there isn't right or wrong. They're both perfectly fine. And in my experience for English speakers, the S sound, so Barcelona, is easier to emulate than the Barcelona sound. But of course, you can pick whichever you find more appealing or interesting. In terms of vocab, obviously here, as I always say, languages are alive. They evolve with time, and they belong to the people, to the communities they speak it, not to linguists and institutions. So obviously, the language has evolved and into having different, having particularities depending on where you are. And that tells as well in terms of the vocabulary. Here in Spain, for example, we refer to cars as coches, whereas in places like Mexico, Colombia, or Cuba, they will be talking of carros. Equally, it's very common to hear the word computadora to refer to computer in places like Mexico. And in my opinion, this is also as a consequence of English influence because of the United States being so close. But here in Spain, we refer to the machines that we use in our on our daily lives as ordenadores. So basically, just like the ancient philosophical divide of the English-speaking world with chips and fries, we also have, these differences in the Spanish-speaking world. The other thing that I get asked very often is the difference between tú and usted. They both mean you, basically. But tú is, I would say, more informal. We use it with friends, family, and people who are our age. Whereas usted is the formal version of the pronoun, used to show respect and politeness. That being said, in Spain, usted tends to sound very cold and distant, so we rarely use it. In my personal experience or my preference would be to use it only in very, very specific situations. Like, for example, if I'm on a bus and I want to like cede my place to an old lady, I would refer to her as usted. But I wouldn't use it even to talk to my boss or my grandmother, for example. However, it is the preferred form in most of Latin American countries. There is used in a very informal or familiar way. So once again, here there isn't right or wrong, and you guys can choose. If you're interested to learn the language, of course, you can choose whichever suits you best. I would say that if you're in Spain, tú would be the best way to refer to people, because otherwise we're going to create, as I said before, that distance. Yeah, I think that's all for the first block in terms of language. I want to get now in the second one, the cultural insights, which I think might be more interesting for some of you. I'm going to try to bring some clarity in terms of certain things that have been in the news lately, like the dilemma with tourism, right? Mass tourism in the country. But I also want to debunk certain stereotypes that I think sometimes stigmatize people in Spain and beyond in the wider Spanish-speaking world. So avoiding stereotypes, I think there are basically three things here, which is siesta every day, flamenco everywhere, and always late. There's a bit of truth in this, of course, but not entirely. So let's start with the siestas. I see someone is laughing there. People in Spain used to sleep siestas, but sorry to disappoint, it is not the case. It's not the case anymore. In big cities, at least, people are usually working, not snoozing in the afternoon. And the siesta, I would say, survives mostly in small towns or during the summer heat. It is true that Spaniards still like to have a good siesta when they're on holidays, especially if they live in the south, where temperatures can reach up to 40 degrees in summer. Who would like to be outside anyways, right? In regards to flamenco, flamenco is something that we're all very proud of. But in terms of how it appeals to us culturally, here there is also great differences. Flamenco is amazing, but it's mostly from Andalusia, which is the southern region, that big region that we have, well, in the south of the country. Spain has actually many musical traditions. Where I'm from, which is Galicia, in the north west part of the country, right above Portugal, it is Celtic music. Celtic music is the norm, and the traditional instrument is actually the bagpipe, just like in Ireland. We're actually the seventh Celtic nation, the one that nobody knows about. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. What I try to convey here, guys, is that you shouldn't expect to see, well, you shouldn't expect every bar, basically, to have a dancer in a red dress waiting for you. I think Rob wants to ask something. I'm gonna give you. Is it okay for you?
Hi,
Yeah, go ahead.
good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
It's
Tell me.
LBC. Would you please drop in the chat maybe a popular Celtic band or group in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest one, his name is Carlos Núñez. I can provide a list actually of several bands and also festivals. There's a very big festival in the northern part of Galicia that takes place every August and is completely free. So I can send some of that info later in detail. So if you guys want to have a look at it, and you're obviously more than welcome to come to Galicia and enjoy Celtic music with us. Um, so yeah, moving on. I want to talk as well about this idea that the Spaniards are always late. We do enjoy a flexible sense of time. But that differs depending on the context. So socially, it is the case. We often are late, but that's not the case for work appointments. When it comes to work, we're as punctual as anyone else. So basically, think if you are living in Spain, think relaxed but not reckless. Basically, don't be late for work, guys. Your boss in Spain will not appreciate that. Um, Something else I want to talk about is restaurant etiquette. Um, Spanish people are proud of flamenco. They are also very proud of their food. Uh, Me particularly, not so much. I enjoy spicy food myself. But it is true that Spaniards are proud people when it comes to their food. Meals are sacred in the country, and they structure the day. So a little bit of vocabulary here. Desayuno, almuerzo y cena, which translates as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast is normally very light here in the country. We tend to have well, a cup of Joe and just run to the office, so we're not late. Because remember, we're not usually late. We tend not to be late uh, for work. However, lunch and dinner are heavy, and they take place compared to neighboring countries quite late in the day. So lunch usually takes place between 2 and 3, sometimes even later than that, and dinner between 9 and 10. And you guys might be wondering, why is it the case? Because even if you go to Portugal, which shares many, there's a lot of common ground with Portugal when it comes to culture. In this regard, the Portuguese are more like the French or the Germans. And the reason for this is, it's multifaceted, but something that people often don't know about is that historically, I believe this happened back in the 40s, Spain shifted its clock to align with Nazi Germany. Remember, back then we had a dictator that was quite cozy with Hitler. So he wanted to, well, get as friendly with the Reich as possible. And that's why, even though Spain lies geographically on the same longitude as the UK and Ireland, we Spaniards eat and work an hour ahead of the sun. I think it's important to remember that despite all this, it's I think it's good to remember that even though kitchens are open till late, it's better to avoid arriving to restaurants after 2:30 for lunch or 10:30 for dinner. Basically, out of respect for workers' schedule. Um, in certain parts of the country, and I get to that when I talk about tourism, there tends to be a bit of like a culture of exploiting workers, especially in the hospitality sector. And I think it's good to remember that these people have also families to attend and lives to live. So it's good not to show up super late for meals in restaurants. Um, Tipping, by the way, is not as customary as it is in other countries like the US. So basically what we do, if we like the service, we just round up the bill, and that often suffices. So moving around, if you guys visit Spain, you will be interested on how to move around. And there's like a few things, few interesting things here to note. I'm going to talk about three things here basically, which is trains, planes, and cars. In regards to trains, something which I think is very interesting about Spain is the fact that it has the second largest high-speed rail network in the world, second only to China. As I mentioned in there, there's over 5,500 kilometers of high-speed rail lines. You can get from Madrid to Barcelona in just above 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours and a half, which reach up to 300 kilometers per hour. Until a few years ago, there was only one operator in the country, that is Renfe, which is basically the state-owned company that runs all train services, including maintenance and reparations of trains and so on. But there are new operators coming into the market since 2021, 2022. The government decided recently to open the market to private operators, and that's actually dropping the prices down. You can find tickets for that very same journey I mentioned before, Madrid to Barcelona, for as cheap as 25 euros if you book in advance. So that is really good. That's one way. It would be 50 euros return probably. In terms of airports, Spain has around 50 airports. I think it's 46 in total that operate for civil use. And that's one of the highest numbers in the EU. Obviously, the main hubs are in Madrid. That's the airport of Barajas Airport. And in Barcelona, where we have the airport of El Prat. But there's excellent regional coverage, actually. Even small cities like Granada, Oviedo, or Vigo, where I'm from, up north, have their own airport. So basically, you can fly domestically very cheaply. Flying in Spain is fast and frequent. Another thing is carpooling or ride sharing. That's also very popular in Spain. I don't think it is as popular in Ireland and the UK, but we have a platform here called BlaBlaCar, which is a French company that I think launched this app already 15 or 20 years ago, but has become very, very popular over the last few years. It's hugely popular for medium distance travel. It's affordable, it's social, it's eco-friendly, and it's also great for practicing Spanish while meeting locals. I recently did the ride from Vigo to Madrid, which is 6 to 7 hours, depending on who's driving. And I pay for that 33 euros. So that's also really good if you can find cheap options with train or flights. So I talked about this, I mentioned this before, and I want to develop a bit further, and it's the issue of tourism and its discontents here in the country. You've probably seen the news recently with people in cities like Barcelona or Palma de Mallorca going with, water guns, basically, watering tourists that were feeling a bit like out of place, and well, it made for a strange image. But I want to explain why the sentiments are running high as they are at the moment. Something that we need to understand first is why tourism thrives in Spain. Spain is it's a global superpower when it comes to tourism. Last year, 2024, we had over 90 million visitors, and that's been the case ever since the pandemic. Spain has been breaking records of visitors year after year. It ranks often on the top 3 of global tourist destinations, often together with France and the States. And tourism creates or sustains 2 million jobs in the country and accounts for 10% of GDP. Sometimes people even talk of 11 or 12%, but I decided to go conservative here. So as you can see, it's very important for the national economy, and it's a bit of a dilemma for the government on how to handle this, because there are obviously some challenges and criticisms. The first one of those challenges is mass tourism. Obviously, we get many tourists, but they don't spread across the country evenly. There are iconic spots like Barcelona, Gothic Quarter, or El Barrio del Gótico, as well as Venice-like parts of Mallorca that can feel very overcrowded, especially in the summer. That leads to other problems, such as rising costs for locals, especially in regards to short-term rentals, the Airbnb culture, and well, it's basically pushing up housing costs and everyday expenses in popular cities. I remember being in Barcelona recently and reading a graffiti that said something like, "Your 6 euros latte, it's how was it? Your 6 euros latte is kicking me out of my neighborhood," or something like that. So obviously, more tourists means that more business are thriving, but also is creating the problem of gentrification, right? And in certain neighborhoods, people are basically seeing how they cannot pay rent anymore. The other issue with this is with tourism, with mass tourism, is obviously the environmental impact. Mass tourism strains natural resources, especially water in coastal regions like where I live, even though I would say that the problem is more acute in the south. As a matter of fact, Spain is, after Greece, if I remember correctly, the country in the EU that is more vulnerable to desertification. We actually have a big desert in Almeria that is growing every year due to lack of water, lack of rain, and obviously having, too many people moving to those parts of the country exacerbates the problem, all these problems, right? A scarcity of resources. That being said, there's of course positive things that can be said, right? The government is acting to make sure that tourism remains a net positive sector for the country and Spanish society. One of the things that people are trying to, well, the government and the institutions are trying to do is to spread visitors around with rural tourism and sustainable initiatives. So you'll find more authentic spots to enjoy. Where I live, for example, we have this city called Santiago de Compostela, which is about 2 hours north of where I live, and is known for having a big cathedral where pilgrims visit by the thousands every year. People do this thing called El Camino de Santiago. There's different versions of it. The most popular ones are the Portuguese and the French ones. And basically here where I live, tourism is not a problem yet. We get about 300,000 tourists every year, but it's a region that accounts for 3 million people. So basically that's a rather diluted number of tourists that we can actually host. So yeah, the idea is if I could share a word with you as a Spaniard who lives in the country and who is affected or has friends who've been affected by these issues, is as a guest, as long as you show respect towards the culture, you will always be welcome here. Obviously, learning a few Spanish phrases, avoiding congested local streets at peak hours, and support small businesses rather than going to have lunch at McDonald's goes a long way. And also avoiding avoiding to overuse short-term rentals in fragile zones like Barcelona, for example, or Palma de Mallorca. It's important. I want to underline that Spain remains a friendly country for tourists. Sometimes I get questions from my friends abroad. Are we still going to feel welcome in your country? And the answer is yes, but obviously there are certain things to take into account when coming here. So moving on, something I wanna talk about as well, because it is my understanding that some of you might be considering making the move to Spain, is housing. As I mentioned before, as part due to tourism, but also due to inflation and other problems that are not foreign to people in Ireland or Germany or wherever, rents are getting more and more costly every year. So moving to Spain implies taking into consideration certain aspects within these well, with everything that related to housing. I think the first thing to take into account is that even though rents are getting pricier, this is not the case everywhere, or at least the problem is not as obvious everywhere. It's not the same to live in a city that to live in the countryside, la ciudad y el campo, the city and the country. Rents in places like Madrid, Barcelona, and also San Sebastian, which some of you might know, is a beautiful city in the Basque Country, so close to the to the Spanish Pyrenees, on the Spanish side. Those are the cities where rents tend to be the highest. As a matter of fact, I think San Sebastian has the highest square meter, the most expensive square meter in the country in terms of renting and also buying. That's probably as a consequence of being so close to the French border. There's many French people who come there for their summer holidays, and some of them end up actually buying a second residency in the city. In contrast, in many interior or less touristic provinces, such as the one I live in, Galicia, but also Extremadura or Aragon, rents are far more affordable. For those seeking better value, I would recommend going to cities like Valencia or Seville, which are medium-sized cities. I think Valencia is just over a million, has over 1 million inhabitants, but rents there don't go as high as obviously Barcelona or the capital, Madrid. Galicia is also really good where I live. Actually, the north is also very good in terms of rent. I have a friend, for example, who lives in a beautiful apartment, two rooms in Vigo, overseeing the ocean, and he pays 600 euros a month, everything included. I have another friend who lives in a similar apartment without the sea views in Madrid and pays twice that amount. Twice that amount for a central apartment, that's 1,200 euros, right? For a central apartment in Madrid, it might not sound like much, but you need to bear in mind that minimum salary in Spain, it's actually below 1,300 euros a month. So paying 1,200 euros for an apartment is actually quite a lot here. If you're looking for apartments, the most common website is idealista.com, which lists apartments, share flats and houses across the country. But something that you need to take into account when you're going to be working mostly with agents and with agencies. And back in the days, this used to have quite some controversial tendencies, like agents would ask potential tenants to pay fees equivalent to 2 or 3 months of rent in advance for their services. The current government passed a new bill back in 2023 that, among other things, has made illegal for agents to charge these fees, and if they do, they should charge them to the house owners and not the tenants. I want to underline this because I have a few students who have moved to Spain in recent years, and they didn't know about this, and they end up paying 1, 2, even 3 grants to agents that they shouldn't have paid for. So if you guys ever, find yourself negotiating with an agent and this person asks for 2 months of rent or something like that, say no, because you have the right to do so, and this person has no right whatsoever to ask for that kind of money. One more thing, before I give you guys the floor for Q's and A's. I'm sure that many of you are aware that Spain is a multinational country. It has languages and regional identities that go beyond or transcend beyond Spanish itself. There's basically three that are known as historical or historic nations. And those are the Catalans, the Basques, and the Galicians. I'm Galician myself, so I know quite a bit about this. And I want to guide you guys through some of the stereotypes and, again, try to bring some clarity to what's going on in regards to, um, these three regions in the country. I think it's important to remember that Spain is divided in 17 regions, administrative regions, but these three actually stand out for their strong regional identities. They have their own language, traditions, and sense of collective identity, yet all remain, of course, part of Spain's political and cultural fabric. The ones that everyone know about is the Catalans, Barcelona being the capital city of Catalonia, one of the most iconic cities in Europe, if not in the world. The Catalans have a strong sense of cultural and linguistic pride, and it shows because they have experienced independence movements, right? Particularly between 2015 and 2019. In 2017, there was an illegal, under constitutional Spanish law, an illegal referendum to vote for the independence of the country that made the news worldwide. But I gotta say that the issue remains nowadays politically sensitive, but largely peaceful. So I don't foresee myself any referendum in the upcoming years or in the short term. The Basques also have a deep local tradition and a strong sense of autonomy. And many of you might remember the Basque separatist movement because of the violent phase that was led by ETA or ETA, which in a way has some parallels with the IRA in Ireland, but this ended over a decade ago. The group has gone through a process of disarmament, and their political branch has been legalized, and they actually participate in the Basques regional elections. Yeah, the situation is quite stable in the Basque country, and definitely the independence movement is not as strong as it is in Catalonia today. And last but not least, my people, the Galicians, our identity is closely related to the sea, to the ocean, music, as well as Celtic culture, as I mentioned before. Definitely less separatists than our friends in Catalonia and the Basque country. The autonomy here focuses more on cultural promotion than independence. I think what's important for newcomers to remember is that these languages exist. We have our own languages, but everyone speaks Spanish as well. And it is not necessary per se to learn the regional languages. Spanish is universally spoken across the entire country, as I already said. So you can manage daily life, work, and social interactions entirely in Spanish. That being said, obviously picking up some local words can enrich your experience and connection. That might be easier in places like Catalonia or Galicia than in the Basque country. And the reason for that is that, well, basically Basque is a linguistic isolate, is unrelated to any other European language, and linguists are still having headaches trying to understand where it comes from. just to give an example, and with this I finish, we say gracias in Spanish, gracias in Catalan, grazas in Galician, but it's eskerrik asko in Basque, so quite different. And with those thank yous, I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and I would like to give you the floor for preguntas, for Q&As. I'll do my best to answer any questions you guys might have. Anyone? Don't be shy. No?
I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions after me. So, if you're eating so late, I'm just curious, what time do you go to bed?
Oh, very late, actually. Yeah, that's an issue in Spain that many people don't even think about this. It's very common to go to bed past midnight, but with like working, I mean, people go to work just like in any other country in Europe, right? At 9 or even before that, you need to be at the office. But if you finish dinner at midnight, you know the amount of hours you get to squeeze in for sleeping is less, and that's the reason why actually Spain has one of the lowest productivity ratios in Europe. People, that's going back to the stereotypes and stigmas. Often people think of Spanish. And quite frankly, this happens, I think, across Mediterranean, southern countries in Europe. Our neighbors up north tend to think of us as lazy, but I think it's not so much that we're lazy, but we're more tired, you know.
Mhm. I hear you.
We also like to party more, and that also adds to the equation. But it's also the schedules. They don't work in our favor.
And a little slightly different question. What's the culture, um, a work culture for language teachers, for English teachers? What does it look like if you're working at a private school as far as the hours and also the expectations, so number of classes and I mean I know that this is kind of granular, but roughly.
So uh, I wish I could give you like a detailed answer on these, but as you probably understand, I don't have inside knowledge because well, first of all, I learned English abroad, not in schools here in the country, but also I'm not an English teacher myself, right? That being said, I do have some students who are English teachers in the country, and I think it varies from one school to the next. You know, you need to take into account that often people who take lessons um, are foreigners, and some of them might be retired in Spain and therefore have the luxury of time. They can take lessons in the morning. But when they are young professionals, they're working during the day. So the only time they can actually go to school is weekends or afternoons. So I think some teachers have, you know, an easy schedule. Like they might be working from like 9 till 3, 4. But I think some of them work also afternoons or weekends. I think it really varies, you know. I wish I could give you a more detailed answer to this one, Rob, but I'm afraid there isn't like a one size fits all, formula.
Oh, can I
Do
make a
you
question?
go ahead.
Oh, can I make a question? Sorry.
Absolutely, Mateus. I'm listening. Tell
My
me.
name is Matheus. In the section of your slide called moving around, there was a little map of a railway in the right side, showing some cities and of the high-speed railway, but I did not recognize the cities exactly. I would like to ask you if there is a main railway that you recommend us to go in Spain, if there is a scenic route that you recommend us to do in Spain, like from city to city. Do you understand?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. You're asking me for recommended routes to move around in Spain by train?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Look, I mean, again, just like in any other city, like I've been to London many times, right? People in England complain
Yes.
that everything happens through London, and it's kind of the same in Spain. Madrid sits geographically at the heart of the country. So if you happen to be in Spain, it's gonna be very easy for you to move around. You can like in a few hours, in 2, 3 hours, you can be in Bilbao, you can be in Valencia, you can be in Barcelona, you can be in Seville, right? It's a bit different for people who live in more
Yeah.
peripheral regions, such as myself. For me to go from Vigo to Madrid, I need to get a train from Vigo to Orense, which is an hour. And then from Orense, I need to change and get another train to Madrid. The whole journey will take me about 4 hours, but the distance is not much bigger than it is from Madrid to Barcelona. And from Madrid to Barcelona is actually 90 minutes shorter. So it really depends where you are. But I think if you're in any of the main cities of the country, Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Seville, chances are you're going to be very well connected by train. As I said before, 5,500 kilometers of high-speed rail lines. And it's very
So very
safe.
easy transportation, right?
Yeah, yeah. And again, you always have the option to fly domestically if that's something you might consider, or even, going by sharing car with someone.
Okay, okay. And one last question. In Galicia, you speak
Yes.
Galician, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is easier for us Portuguese speakers to accommodate in Galicia because of the language.
Yeah, I see your surname is Cardoso. I take it
See,
that you might, yeah. Yeah,
Brazilian.
so absolutely. I mean, the thing with Galician is it can be a double-edged sword because Galician resembles Portuguese very much, and they share historical roots, right? Galicia and Portugal. The language has evolved to be closer to Spanish, like sounding wise, for example, we do the sound, right? We say grafas. Um, but it does share a lot of the vocab, you know. The thing is, as a minority language, it's not it's spoken, it's understood across the region, but in comparison to Catalonia, for example, where most people go for Catalan as their first language, in Galicia that's not necessarily the case. I think especially in the cities, people will go for Spanish. Even if you talk to people, I use Galician. Galician is my first language because I grew up in the countryside. But often when I'm in the city, if I speak Galician to people, they would reply to me in Spanish. And that's obviously fine. We all understand each other. But I don't think that being Portuguese is going to make your learning in Galician necessarily easier because of the language. That being said, I will say that being Portuguese will make your transition into Spanish culture much faster and easier, because going from Portuguese to Spanish is much easier than going from English to Spanish. So it should be easy for you to learn the language and get used to the Spanish sound.
Gracias, gracias. And there is many, how can I say to you, many good questions in the chat as well by, for example, Andrew and Jessica in the written chat. They did
Mhm.
not speak, but they wrote very good questions in the chat as well, just for
Right.
you to know, sir.
Yeah, I'll make sure to have a
Perfect.
look, and I'll try to get back to you guys with all my answers. Muito obrigado,
And
Mateus.
thank you for the explanation, sir, very
No
much.
problem.
Gracias.
No worries, my pleasure. Um, I think I still have time to take one more question, if any. No? Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you all for being here with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to tell a little bit about my country and my culture. Um, I've been told that I'm allowed to do a little bit to promote my services a little bit. So in case any of you guys is considering private lessons, or like you're considering to learn Spanish, I will be more than glad to discuss with you, well, basically how to make your Spanish learning journey as smooth as possible. My email is in there. If you have any questions also related to today's presentation, you can reach me out. And I wish you all the best and best of luck if you guys decide to move to Spain and teach English. We need English teachers, so thank you very much.